This is Dr. Tori. Welcome to the Influence Everyday Show, where we make every day better and we influence for good. In a previous show, we discussed a bit about reframing, and you went through an exercise where you took a moment to imagine a little girl. She was looking back over her shoulder, giggling really hard as she was running forward. And then you took note of how you felt, and then we painted another scene, same scene actually, but gave a little bit more detail and more data. And in that scene, you imagined that same little girl giggling, looking back over her shoulder, laughing really hard as she ran forward. She was running right for a busy street, and there were two adults chasing after her, really worried, arms outstretched, look of horror on their faces as they try to stop her from going into the street. Then you took note of how you felt, and then we expanded the picture a bit more and realized that there was producers, there were cameras, there were lights, it was a Hollywood set, and those were actors and actresses. Same little girl, same adults, same busy street, but it was all part of a Hollywood set. And you took note of how you felt in each of those three sort of glimpses into the same scene. That we illustrated as an example of reframing. I want to tell you a couple examples of where reframing can really change your life or change the lives of other people that you're talking to. One of those stories comes from when I was actually having a bunch of people over. So I have 6 children, and we had spent pretty much the entire day preparing for this thing, whether it was preparing food or cleaning up or doing all these things. And so we had cleaned up, prepared the food, gotten dressed, and I walked out and I looked into the living room, and the living room was a hot mess. I mean, cushions were off the couches, splayed across the floor. There was like a sheet hanging from one of the lights and pinned up along the way. And like, there were toys everywhere. It was just like a crazy mess. And this was about 15 to 20 minutes, probably more like 20 minutes before the guests were due to arrive. At first, I started boiling. The flood of emotions that came in that moment. Now, fortunately, no one was there. So, meaning everyone was like either getting dressed or somewhere. They just weren't in that room. And I took a moment to check in as I realized how angry I was. And so I took a moment to check in and realized I have to change my state. In that split second, I have to change my state. Why? Because if I did act out on the anger, what would happen? What would be the downstream consequences? If I, called all the kids in, started shouting at them, grounding people, saying they can't, use their phones or play games or go outside or whatever, right? If I started doing all that and shouting, and then the little ones would start crying and they'd have the dirt streaked tears down their eyes as the guests come in, and I'd be like, oh, I'm so glad you guys came. No, it would be obvious. They'd be like, what the heck happened here, right? Kids would all be in a bad mood, still having that breathing after the cry. You can imagine. In that moment, what did I do? I basically took a moment to reframe. Because you may have heard that quote from Wayne Dyer, where he said, actually I don't remember the exact quote, but when you change the way you see the world you see changes. When you change the way you see your kids' behavior, the behavior of your kids changes. When you change the way you see someone else's behavior, you change the way you respond. In that moment, take it as a moment of reframe. What does this mean? Does it mean disrespect? Does it mean that they don't understand? Does it mean that they just completely flew in the face of it? They just don't care? Does it mean that? Or could it mean that I have a lively household, that honestly, I should be grateful? I have 6 healthy kids who play together. And yeah, the room's a mess, but we have 20 minutes. And you know what? A lot of times people come late. We have time to clean up. In that moment, I thought, in about 15 years, this room will be exactly the way I left it the last time I walked out of it. Now, at least, there's a sense of vibrance and life, and people are there. And my kids are home. Because in 15 years, they won't be. They'll be married, they'll be studying, they'll be somewhere else. I took it as a moment to reframe for gratitude. So take anger and reframe it. And then what did I do, by the way? After reframing and getting centered, I mean, it wasn't instantaneous, by the way. It's not like this just happens automatically. You can train yourself so that it becomes a habit of checking in and changing your state and trying different things to change your state, like with reframes as a super powerful tool. But in this particular case, after a few moments, after I reflected, felt grateful, and all those things, what did I do? I put a laundry basket in the corner of the room. And then I was like, come on, guys, come on in here. Let's all go, 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 go. Called them all in. And I was like, hey, okay, see that basket over there? Okay, we have 45 seconds to put all the toys in there. And so we just started shooting baskets. I'm like, who can hit from the farthest away? And we started throwing them in and throwing this. Okay, let's put the cushions back on the couch. 10, 9, 8. Just count down, right? Like it became a game. And then what happened? When their friends came over, when the guests came over, they were in a much better mood. So was I. So reframing can be super powerful for your own mood, for your own state, for your own relationships. Now, how might you reframe for someone else? Take that same example, similar example, kids playing. So I hear, one day I was sitting on my couch, and it's not too far from the kitchen, and I heard my kids talking, and two of them were saying to each other, this is impossible. You know what? This is impossible. And I was like, whoa, who just said that? And they're like, what? I said, who just said that? Who just said that word? And they're like, what word? We didn't say anything. I was like, that word impossible. Who said that? And then they're like, it's this cube, this Rubik's Cube thing. You know, it's impossible. And so we both said it. And I was like, I don't ever want to hear that word in this house. You know how I feel about that, right? About saying things are impossible. When you were born, I literally registered your domain names so that you could potentially, maybe you'll become president. Maybe you'll become, governor. Maybe you'll be a celebrity. So I registered your domain name so your competitors don't get it. Don't tell me something's impossible. Find a way, right? And they're like, yeah, find a way. Okay, you do it. And they threw me the Rubik's Cube. And in that moment, I didn't know how to solve it. So what did I do? After they were like, yeah, see, told you so, blah, blah, blah. I got on Amazon and I ordered 2 speed Rubik's Cubes, like the type they use in competitions. I ordered 2 of them. I watched videos over the weekend on how to solve the Rubik's Cube. So I learned the patterns and things like that people do. And then next time I went to them and I showed them. I showed them that I could solve it. And then what happened? I taught a few of them and we started competing to see who could finish the fastest. Now that has since died down, but the point is you get the lesson. They said it was impossible, and demonstration is a way of reframing. When somebody completely sees the opposite of what they thought, it can be shocking. We'll cover in another episode on pattern interrupts, but it can shock people into a different frame. And that frame is, it went from impossible to how quickly can we solve it? Not from impossible to possible, but impossible to how quickly can we get it done? And then it got to the point where we were within only a few minutes of being able to solve the puzzle. Those 2 instances of reframes, one to change my own state, another to demonstrate and reframe for someone else so that they see the world differently. I did not want my kids thinking things are impossible and therefore not worth working on. Let's find a way. It's kind of like Steve Jobs was quoted. Sometimes they would say in a 30-minute meeting, he would say, there must be a better way. 12 or 15 times is what some reports have had. Now, the third story that I want to tell you about reframing, I created actually a micro course. It's free. I mean, just go to drtori.com or influenceeverywhere.com and opt in right there. You just put your name and email and you'll be given this sort of micro course on how a single conversation and a single reframe can completely transform someone's life. And in fact, in hypnosis, we call it hypnotic gifts. GIFTS. Gifts, right? When you're talking to somebody, you can deliver a gift with a reframe and completely change their life. So go ahead, go to drtori.com or influenceeverywhere.com and sign up there. Put your name and email. It's free. There's no charge, nothing like that. There are a bunch of short videos, as short as any single podcast episode that I have. Go ahead and check it out. Hopefully I'll see you in there. You can post comments, you can ask questions. This is only the end of today's show if you let it be. Who needs to hear what you just heard? go ahead and share it with them right now. The Influence Everyday podcast is free. We don't sell advertising space, so telling others is the best way to pay us back, but more importantly, it's the best way to pay it forward. If you enjoyed today's podcast, take a moment to rate and review the show, then check out the additional links and materials that go along with it. They offer more ways to take your influence, your impact, and your relationships to a whole new level. Now go forth and influence for good, every day.